brothers and sisters, the month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran. And we all have aspirations to recite the whole Quran during this blessed month. We all have this aspiration. Yet the vast majority of us will fall short in the fulfillment of this aspiration. Because those of us who do not give the Quran its due right before the month of Ramadan will not be able to give its right during the month of Ramadan. This is a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you want to finish the Quran during the blessed month of Ramadan, then start reading the Quran today. Start preparing yourself today. Because it is with preparation that one will be ready. And this is why we see, as we mentioned earlier, that the Salaf radiallahu ta'ala anhum were so successful during the Ramadans. And they were able to accomplish so much during the Ramadans. Not only would they set goals of what they wanted to achieve during this blessed month, but they would actually take those physical steps of what was needed to fulfill those actions during the blessed month of Ramadan. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq, not only to set goals so that we may increase our iman and do those deeds that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but to actually grant us tawfiq, to take those steps so that we can be prepared for that month. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the blessed month of Ramadan by saying أيام معدودات, that Ramadan is but a numbered amount of days. And we know the importance of time and the restrictions of time. When we are with our families, we try to make the most of it. When we're playing our sports, we try to make the most of our time, that we get the most physical activity that we can do. And likewise, when we are studying, we try to get in the most amount of studying possible in that amount of time, so that we may benefit from it. And likewise, brothers and sisters, we need to have the same attitude when it comes to Ramadan. That Ramadan is a month where we get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ramadan is a month where we do those deeds that please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will save us from the hellfire. So make the most of Ramadan. Set those goals. Set those goals for Ramadan and take those steps that you will need to take in order to achieve those actions during the blessed month. And one of the best ways to do this is by remembering death. One of the best ways to prepare yourself for the month of Ramadan is by remembering death. That when you remember death, you will realize that you have no control over your life in this world. You have no control over how long you will live. You have no control over when or how you will die. This is completely in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For all we know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not even grant us life to live this Ramadan. But if you make the intention from now, to improve for the month of Ramadan and to prepare for the month of Ramadan, then if you were to die today, at least Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise you up with that intention and will reward you for that intention, even though you weren't able to fulfill it. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the Quran, He reminds us of this scenario on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when we all show up, when each and every one of us is there, and their actions are in front of them. And He will say, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَأَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَ أَحَدُكُمُ الْمَوْتِ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّ لَوْلَا أَخَّرْتَنِي إِلَى أَجَلٍ قَرِيبٍ لِأَصَّدَّقُ وَأَكُنْ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ وَلَنْ يُؤَخِّرَ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلُهَا وَاللَّهُ خَبِيرٌ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. That during Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise us, and each individual, he will be in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he will say, "Oh my Lord, please just delay my reckoning so that I may go back to the dunya and may do some sort of good deed. Return me back to the dunya so that I may do that good deed." And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that He will not delay departing of any soul from this dunya, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all aware of what you do. brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed life upon you. He has bestowed health and wealth upon you. Make the most of it in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and preparing for this blessed month. And I remind you of a commandment, a great one indeed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself begins with when he says, إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا وإذا أحييت أحدا منا فأحيه على الإسلام وإذا توفيت أحدا منا فتوفاه على الإيمان اللهم ابلغ علينا رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا اللهم ابلغنا رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا اللهم ابلغنا رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا اللهم إنا نعوذ برضاك من سخطك وبمعافاتك من عقوبتك وبك منك ولا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وأقيم الصلاة.